Hey everybody, you're watching We the Fandom, where we discuss comic books, pop culture, and the fandom experience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content. How's it going everybody? Jacob here at We the Fandom, and today I'm going to be talking about movies. Now, whether or not you have decided that you're feeling good enough to go back and start going into theaters to see a movie, or where you're just watching Netflix or Hulu at home, I'm sure we're all still watching movies. And when you watch a movie, whether you go into a theater or watch it on a streaming service, you walk in there thinking there needs to be a certain number of black people in this movie. There needs to be a certain number of transgender people, certain number of women, certain number of Latino people for this movie to say it's definitely a recommend. Now, if you are one of those people, you are actually going to be getting your wish because there are new standards set up that make it basically diversity requirements for movie creators if you want to win an Oscar in the future. This is from an article by the New York Times. New Oscar standards require Best Picture contenders must be inclusive to compete. Let's go here. Actually, just change that real quick. All right. So, new Oscars standards, best compared, blah, blah, blah. The first line in here is actually pretty funny. It says, and the Oscar goes to inclusion, which I'm assuming they put that there unironically. In the latest step in its ongoing efforts to boost diversity both within its own ranks and across the film industry, on Tuesday, the Film Academy announced new representation standards for films to be eligible to compete for Best Picture, which I think by definition, Best Picture would just mean it's a good quality movie, and diversity doesn't have anything to do with the quality. I mean, if it's a good movie, it's a good movie. There's plenty of good movies that I have had almost entirely homogenous casts. Developed over the past few months by a special task force as part of the organization's Academy Aperture 2025 initiative. The standards encompass both representation on screen and the types of stories being told and the actors involved, as well as behind the scenes, the makeup of the crew, and the inclusivity of the companies involved. I mean, shouldn't it just be people who are best at the job? You know, when you're picking the crew, working behind the scenes, you want your movie to do well, and part of that is picking people who are competent. Now, if you're going resumes and you're sifting through resumes, filtering through, getting a certain quota of different skin colors and different genders and all that, I mean, I think you're to be choosing for quality. Like, look at someone's resume and see if they're the best person for the job. If you're looking at shallow characteristics that people don't have any control over, as opposed to their actual work ethic and accomplishments, then you're probably not getting a very competent crew. And as for the actors, that should only pertain to the story being told. If your story is like there's been lots of complaints about war movies because they're historically accurate. That being that, you know, a World War I movie has a mostly white cast because units were segregated back then. I mean, shouldn't be changing that kind of stuff just for diversity. I mean, if you want to make a diverse movie and that's the point of the movie, that's fine. But I mean, I think the standards are silly, and you're probably going to ruin quality of movies over time. To be eligible for Best Picture, a film must meet at least two standards across 4 categories: on-screen representation, themes and narratives, creative leadership and project team, industry access and opportunities, and audience development. There's a little section at the end of this that I'll actually get into, like, the specifics of each of those sections, so I'll get into that in a little bit. Within each category are a variety of criteria involving the inclusion of people in underrepresented groups, including women, people of color, LGBTQ+ people, and those with cognitive or physical disabilities. I've heard that thing before where it's like people with physical disabilities should play people with physical disabilities. It's like, at that point, you're not an actor, you're just being yourself. Is it really best to have somebody who's going to have like special requirements and needs on set to be playing that character? Other Oscar categories will not be held to these same standards, but the contenders for Best Picture typically filter down to other feature-length categories. Previously, the only standards to qualify for Best Picture involved a film's running time and specifics about how, where, and when it's screened in a public venue. The new standards will not go into effect until the 96th Oscars in 2024. But at a time of racial reckoning for both Hollywood and the nation as a whole, the Academy believes the requirements provide a roadmap for how the industry can ensure that at least those films that compete for its highest honor reflect the diversity of the movie-going audience in the wider world. So we'll have at least 3 or more years of decent movies, assuming movies get made, assuming the pandemic goes away at some point. As for reflecting the wider world, I mean, let's see. The aperture must widen to reflect a diverse global population, both the creation of motion pictures and in the audiences connect with them. What about in countries like Japan, China? If you film a movie in the Middle East, or film a movie in Africa, or in a Scandinavian country, or in one of many almost entirely homogenous nations across the world, those locations will be an accurate representation of those cultures and societies, but they're not going to be diverse. So are you gonna create some sort of exception for those kind of movies? I mean, already there's a fallacy with that kind of logic, and you're going to be creating more problems, which will lead to kind of the lowest common denominator in terms of the variety of movies coming out who will be available to win an Oscar for Best Picture. The new standards were developed by a task force headed by Academy Governors Devon Franklin and Jim Giannopoulos, using a template inspired by the British Film Institute diversity standards that govern eligibility in some categories of the BAFTAs, which I've seen their standards and they're ridiculous. Like, they're a lot worse than what I've read so far for the Oscars. Like, here's a picture of the movie 1917, which if you haven't seen it, is really good. It's a World War I epic. A lot of people complained that the cast was almost entirely white, which, again, units were segregated in the First World War. So if you're focusing, like, this movie focused almost entirely on two characters, and neither of them were people of color or women or anything. But that's an accurate representation of history. I mean, they're gonna have to change if people making a war movie want to win an Oscar, they're gonna have to change the standards, which is stupid. They're gonna have to change the makeup of their cast, which means trying to rewrite history in order to pander so that they can win a award that doesn't mean anything in real life. What should matter is the quality of your movie and whether or not the audience actually likes it. And when it comes to historical movies, it should be historically accurate. Among the new standards, those concerning on-screen representation are likely to garner the most scrutiny. Indeed, most recent Best Picture nominees that featured almost exclusively white and male casts, including the World War I film 1917 and the gangster epic The Irishman. And that's not a problem. There shouldn't be an issue with the best movie nominees being mostly one gender or one race or whatever the hell you want to pick out. If it's the best movie, it's because people decided it was the best movie, not because of diversity and inclusion standards. Those standards require one of the following: at least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. At least 30% of all actors in secondary and more minor roles are from certain underrepresented groups, or the main storyline, theme, or narrative is centered on an underrepresented group. I mean, this is stupid because you're going to be building a movie around these standards instead of making a movie based off of a story that you wanted to tell. And I'm sure there are plenty of stories that could build around that, but it's ridiculous. Any movie that wants to garner respect has to center their movie around artificial quotas based on literally skin deep qualities of their actors and creative teams. Mindful of the difficulty of enforcing potentially heavy-handed mandates, you think, on the types of stories that are deemed worthy for Best Picture consideration. However, the Academy is building in the flexibility for films to meet the inclusion requirements in other areas. For example, films can meet the Industry Access and Opportunities standard if the studio or production company offers paid apprenticeship and internship opportunities and training programs for underrepresented groups across a range of fields, something that is quite common across the industry. If it's already common, then why are they making these changes? And still, you're going to be compromising competency over what skin color the person is when you read the resume. Announced in June, the Academy Aperture 2025 initiative marks the next chapter of the Academy's diversity efforts that began in response to 2 consecutive years of hashtag Oscars So White controversy. So what, in 5 years when this has been going on, I'm going to put hashtag Oscars Suck controversy? Probably not. They'll be celebrating the lower standards of movies because it's diverse. The initiative is geared toward further increasing representation in organizations, governance, membership, and workplace culture, as well as the films nominated for Oscars. In June, the organization announced that it had surpassed the goal set in early 2016 of doubling the number of women and people from underrepresented ethnic racial communities in the group by 2020. And so here's the breakdown of the standards. So for standard A, on-screen representation, themes, and narratives, it's going to have lead or significant supporting actors. At least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group, including Asian, Hispanic, Black, Indigenous, Middle Eastern, Native Hawaiian, or other ethnicity. 30% of actors in secondary or minor roles are at least from at least 2 of the following underrepresented groups: women, racial or ethnic group, LGBTQ+, people with cognitive or physical disabilities. That last one is going to create so many problems on set. Aside from the point that you're picking people to play themselves instead of actors to play these people, which I thought was the entire point of movies, is that you pay an actor to play pretend. They pretend to be someone that they're not, and you give them money, and then you make a movie. Let's see. The main storyline, theme, or narrative of the film is centered on an underrepresented group: women, ethnic minority, LGBTQ, physical disability. That's like the same thing. Oh. The main theme or storyline. How many movies can you make about that? Standard B, creative leadership and project team. So creative leadership and department heads, at least 2 of the following creative leadership positions and department heads. It's got the list: casting director, cinematographer, composer, costume designer, director, editor, hairstylist, makeup artist, producer, production designer, set director, sound, VFX supervisor, writer. Has to be women, ethnic minority, LGBTQ+, or person with physical disabilities, which, again, if you have a person with a physical disability, is a good chance. I would say it's almost more detrimental to have them on the creative or production team than have them play themselves as a character. And basically the same standards for percentage of these groups and what kind of role they should have in the movie. Let's see, standard C, paid internship and apprenticeship opportunities to those minority groups. Standard D, audience development, representation in marketing, publicity, and distribution. The studio and or film has multiple in-house senior executives from among the following underrepresented groups, which again is the minority groups we've already listed, which, that's fine. I guess if they're good at marketing, then whatever, but I think that has the least negative effect on the production of the movie versus the other roles. I mean, did people not listen to, what was it? Either the Academy Awards or the Oscars, where Ricky Gervais went up there and basically said, I'm going to paraphrase for YouTube, but he said, come up here, get your award, and F off. Because you people are literally performers. There's not many people out there actually asking for you to teach us about morality and use film and entertainment to preach diversity and inclusion. I mean, I know there are some people, but I don't think that should have anything to do with the quality of the movie. And I really hope that production companies, directors, everybody involved looks at these standards and say, screw it. Just make good movies. That's it. Make good movies, make your money. Go pick up your Oscar if they give it to you, and you're done. So that's the end of today's video. If you guys are new to We the Fandom, please hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, please smash the like, and I will see you all next time.